Good morning. It is 8:15 on Monday, the 7th of April, 2025. I am the Wolfman. This is Francis, and we're here to talk to you about suffering. I've recently awakened again, and every time I fall asleep, eventually the suffering gets to the point that it drives me back to waking up. And I wake up to the fact that I don't have to suffer. And that information comes in different forms. And there are many awakenings. But the good news seems to be that every time I have one, I sit down and I really institute this into my life. And while, I do, the suffering goes away and I get lost in thought and I get caught up in drama and bullshit and I eventually start suffering again. However, in my next moment of deepest confusion, I have a thread left from that last awakening. So, the one before this was when I came to the conclusion that the default is nothing. So, what that means shortly, because I think I did a video about that. In short, the default is nothing means that the default state of things in the world is that nothing needs to be done. Everything is fine exactly the way it is. Now, I'm not saying that that is the state of the world. I'm saying that that's the default state of the world. So it's like everything is fine. It's like innocent until proven guilty. Everything is fine unless there is something that isn't. Right? It's not that there's... Which, this is not how our brains are normally necessarily wired. Usually, there's at least some part of us that's like, what's wrong? There's got to be something wrong out there. Let me scan and scan and scan until I figure out what's wrong so that I can fix it. And a lot of suffering comes from that assumption that there must be something wrong with the situation that we have to fix. And it's like, I don't know, have you ever considered that maybe there's nothing that you need to do? Maybe everything's fine? And then the other part of it is when there is nothing that needs to be done, the default is to do nothing. Which that's probably a little bit, I'm sure it's human nature, and I'm sure it's been a problem forever, but I think it's definitely exacerbated in the modern era because we've got so much abundance and so much addictive stuff available all of the time. Your phone's with you all of the time, and if you don't like what you're experiencing in the real world, you can immediately pull out your phone and distract yourself. It's not that it's that addictive in the sense of benzos or heroin or something, but it's just so accessible. It's like if you're carrying heroin in your pocket all the time, I would say you're more likely to use it than, if your dealer goes to jail and you don't have another one, then ta-da! I'm some cat butthole. Francis, that's not polite. Oh, I fucking love this cat. Anyway, got distracted. What was I talking about? Suffering, yes. That's the main topic. Right. So, the phones are so accessible, and so they're just... and then they don't do that much damage. Like, you're not going to wake up with a hangover from playing too much on your phone today. So it's a little bit harder to recognize. But, over the course of time, you can recognize if you're using your phone to escape from the present moment all the time, and it's just your go-to, well, the go-to should be nothing. So if you get done with whatever you're doing, fantastic. Doesn't mean you immediately need to find something new to do. You're allowed to just stand in the middle of a sidewalk, not going anywhere, until you decide what you want to do. I know it's weird, and you feel like everybody's staring at you, and it's uncomfortable. But You can, like, if you find yourself walking and you realize, I don't want to be doing this. I don't need to be doing this. I don't know what I want to do. You're allowed to just stop and just stand there. And if that's a problem, eventually somebody will tell you to get out of the way, and then at that point it'll be pretty obvious what to do. Well, I need to get out of the way. You know, or in that may be a little extreme. Maybe you'd rather get back home and get into your comfortable chair where you're safe and comfortable before you do nothing until something that you legitimately want to do comes up. So that's the thing. If it's too easy to go to, and I've already spent too much time on the old, the default is nothing thing, but I wanted to make that clear. If you're automatically going to some behavior, some compulsive behavior, whether it's booze or the phone or, you know, anything that's just like, it's not the action or the substance that's really the problem. The root there, if there isn't, there may be an even deeper root than this, but another layer down where you can solve it at a lower level is that we're not comfortable doing nothing, you know. And I'm not saying, well, put my meditation teacher hat on, meditate an hour a day. I am saying that, but that's not what I'm saying right now. What I'm saying is just come to a full stop, you know? Like, instead of having 3 things in your head that you're going to do next, when you're riding your motorcycle, just ride the motorcycle. And then when you get to your destination, find a spot to park. And then when you're done parking, if you don't know what to do, you can turn the motorcycle off and you can sit there until you do know what to do. That's fine. You don't have to have the next 3 things that you're going to do loaded in your brain. You can relax. Which is not to say that you don't plan and you don't have all these things, but don't use the plan to, well, now I'm getting ahead of myself. So that's the old one. The old one was the default is nothing, which means, A, like if you walk into the woods and you look around, there's probably nothing that needs to be done. You know? If you walk into something that humans have had their hands on, yeah, there's probably something that needs to be fixed. If you look around in the world for problems, you can certainly find them. But if in any small area, it's not, again, it's about the default being that nothing is wrong. It's not that there's probably nothing wrong, really. It's that there's nothing wrong unless something's wrong. Innocent until proven guilty. So if you walk into a room, the room's fine, unless it isn't. And if it isn't, you'll know. You'll be like, oh, there's socks on the floor. Let me pick those up. Whatever, it's a silly example, but the default is nothing, which twofold. Number one, the default is that nothing is wrong and nothing needs to be done. Number two, if you don't have something specific that needs to be done and you don't have something in your mind that you really want to do, then do nothing. Just let yourself rest. Let your mind go spool down. That's fine. And so, in my latest confusion, right before my latest awakening, I had that thread. And still, even while I was caught up in my bullshit, I had a little voice in the back of my head going, default is nothing. What are we doing? Why are we, not having any pauses? Why are we watching TV while we go to bed, waking up and immediately pulling out Facebook? Why are we not meditating? Why are there no pauses? Why is there no nothing in life right now? And it's like a piece of music that's all notes, no spaces between the notes. It's just a solid bar of noise. Who wants that? You gotta have spaces between the notes to make the notes make any sense. Anyway, so that was the old one. This one was more around suffering. It's the same thing looked at from a slightly different angle. I noticed I was obsessively planning. So we'll go through this part of it first because this is kind of a specific and simple thing, specific to me and simple enough, that led to a more generalizable philosophy. So I'll give you the specific problem that I was working through and then the philosophy that I generated out of it. And there's nothing new under the sun. You can find this type of teaching in other places, but this is what I've arrived at and the way that I've arrived at it. So I found myself obsessively planning, like I was talking about. You know, you got to have the next 3 things going on. So I'm out for a walk, but I know that as soon as I get home for the walk, I'm going to take a shower and then I'm going to start doing homework. And on the one hand, like, it's good to have a plan and to have these things that you're going to do, but what it was doing was robbing me of my experience of the walk. I wasn't on the walk. I was in my head. And the other thing, not what it was doing, but the cause of it that I realized was like, okay, so the future is uncertain, and I have anxiety about the uncertainty of the future. And so in order to not feel that anxiety about the fact that the future is uncertain, and instead of like dealing with and becoming comfortable with the uncertainty of the future, I'm trying to escape that fear of uncertainty by, you know, managing the future into my nice, neat little plan and wrapping it up in a bow and pretending like everything's actually going to go the way that I planned. Which doesn't work. Like, it helps me ignore the anxiety, but it doesn't make the anxiety go away. And so, you were just going to town over here, buddy. You're distracting me. You got to be still if you're going to be here right now. Be still. Be still. Fair enough. Right. So I said, okay, well, forget about that. Like, we're not doing that anymore. Like, yeah, we're still going to plan, but we're not going to plan in order to escape anxiety about the future. The future's uncertain, and no amount of planning is going to make it certain. So, deal with it, Benjamin. And so I did. And then, hand in hand with that, I realized that another thing that I'm doing is I'm so busy that I have emotions come up, and I go, oh, I don't, and this is a subliminal process, you know, this is not something that I was fully conscious of, but I became aware of it. This is why I go for an hour-long walk every morning, because it allows, you know, these things to come up. But, yeah, I realized if I would have an emotion that I found uncomfortable or unpleasant, while I was in the middle of doing something, I would ignore that emotion and not feel it. Because it was trying to get my attention. This is the inner child trying to get my attention and going, you know, hey man, like, this hurts or whatever. And it was like, okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop, set down whatever I'm working on, and I'm going to give some loving attention to whatever part of me it is that's trying to talk to me, and whatever this emotion is. Like, hey man, what's going on with you? I'm talking to myself. What's going on with you? Like, how are you feeling? You're upset? What do we have a name for this emotion? Do we know where it's coming from? Are you trying to tell me something? This is me talking to my subconscious parts. Trying to tell me something? Do you need something from me? You want to just sit with this for a minute? And I'm going to pay attention to it. Give it some loving attention. And then, built on top of that, I came back to the realization that I don't have to suffer. I don't have to suffer. Now, in order to understand this, you've got to understand the distinction between pain and suffering. I've had some pushback about this, and I am thrilled to know that when I tell people that I don't have to suffer, that they will argue with me. And because I think at least some of them will argue because they're triggered because they don't want to suffer, and they've had some bad experiences with people who were trying to sell them a life with no suffering in it. Okay, I am not talking about a life with no pain. When I stopped suffering, my heart, I still had heartache and sorrow, and I still had pain in my hip. I just wasn't suffering from it anymore. What does that mean? Okay, so you can look at it. A clear example is people that pay for dominatrixes. Okay, someone will pay good money to have a beautiful woman in a leather suit do horrible things to them, and like that includes pain, like literal physical pain, and these people enjoy it. So, yes, most people, most of the time, automatically think, well, pain isn't any good, but when you have pain and you think it's bad, you're suffering. But like if you go to you can be a little less extreme than the dominatrix example. If you go to a yoga class and you do a deep stretch, that sensation you're feeling is pain. It's not purely pain, but you can feel pain when you do a deep stretch in a tight area, and like if you've got a good instructor, they're talking to you and they say if you feel a sharp or a shooting pain, because the information in the sharpness or the shooting quality of the pain is that you are potentially doing damage to your body. So they say stop if you feel a sharp or a shooting pain. But if you feel like a long, stretching, dull, aching pain, that, well, maybe not an ache. The ache is inconstant. The point, if you feel the stretching pain, that's good pain. And people I like that feeling. When you got tight and you sort of lean into the edge where the pain starts to go, and you're like, oh, there's where it's tight. Oh, that's a good stretch, right? So even pain is not universally bad. So what I'm saying is the pain that we don't like is suffering. It's pain plus not liking the pain that is suffering. But it's even deeper than that, because you can still say, well, I don't like the pain, and not quite be suffering. Like, you don't have to start going to a dominatrix in order to quit suffering from pain. You can still, like, yeah, I wish this pain in my hip would go away. I would, if God came down and said right now, I don't want to deal with anything else except for your hip. Do you want to keep it the way it is, or do you want the pain to go away? Of course, I would take the pain going away. Sure, that's fine. And I can still have all of that preference and not suffer. Because to suffer is just to reject reality as it is. So if I go, well, my hip shouldn't hurt, then I'm suffering. If I go, I'm just in resistance to this pain. And that goes with your emotions as well. So whether it's physical pain, whether it's something that's happening in life, or whether it's an emotion, there are like 3 different ways, psychologically and energetically, to interact with it. You can have accepting energy, you can have embracing energy, you can have clinging or rejecting. And they seem like 2 different things, but I will demonstrate that clinging and rejecting are really the same energy, just going in 2 different directions potentially. So pain and suffering are not the same thing. If you have something happen that goes against your preference, it doesn't matter whether it goes against your preferences or not. Something happens, right? Anything happens to you. Things are going to happen. You're going to go out in the world and things are going to happen. When these things happen, you can accept them, you can reject them, you can embrace them, or you can cling to them. Rejecting, here's the difference between rejecting and clinging. It just seems obvious, but they're both, the way they're the same is that either way, reality is trying to do one thing, and you're trying to get it to do the other thing. So if something is coming at you, and you don't want it to come at you, and you're rejecting it, that's rejecting. If something is going away from you and you don't want it to go away from you, you're clinging. And that's the difference between rejecting and clinging, but in either event, you're fighting reality. Now, we'll use an actual hug as an example. Maybe you're not a hugger, okay? Somebody's a hugger, they come at you, they try to give you a hug. Okay, you can reject them. Say, no thank you, I don't want a hug. You can accept the hug. Take the hug. You can actually embrace the hug. And so you're not just allowing the hug to happen, you're getting in there and you're hugging the person. Then, 3 seconds go by and they start to wiggle and try to pull away, and you just cling. No, you can't. I'm not done hugging you yet. It might be funny, but 4 or 5 seconds go by and they're like, okay, they're going to start talking. They're going to start telling you they don't want to be hugged anymore. 10 seconds go by and now you're in a wrestling match, and what was an embrace is now a crime. So that's a silly example, but that's what it would look like in the physical world. However, you don't have to accept the hug in the physical world in order to have accepting energy inside your energetic self, inside your psychological, your mental self. So you can still be in acceptance and in allowing and reject somebody externally. Okay, you still have the internal energy of accepting reality and allowing reality and even embracing reality. So here's what it looks like. First off, rejecting a hug with rejecting energy. Somebody comes up, they try to hug you. No, thank you. I do not want to hug. They go away. 10 minutes later, you're still grumbling. You're still pissed off because you live in a world where people want to hug you. And it just shouldn't be that. People shouldn't be trying to hug me. I don't want to be hugged. Why don't people know that I don't want to be hugged? I don't like to be touched. Okay. So there's with rejecting energy. Now, with allowing energy, you can still hold your boundaries. If somebody comes up, they want to hug you, you don't like to be hugged for whatever reason. That's none of my business. You're allowed to decide who can touch you and how. That's in my opinion, and I think most civilized people agree with me. You should be allowed to decide who can touch you and how. So somebody comes up and tries to hug you. No, thank you. I don't want to hug. You're allowed to stiff arm people that try to hug you without your consent. But hopefully you don't want to be touched, so you don't want to touch them at all. So hopefully you can just put your hand up and say no, and they won't continue to try to hug you. But if they do, stiff arm them. That's fine. That's allowed. You don't have to let somebody hug you against your will. But you don't have to do it with rejection in your heart either. You can, no thank you, I don't want to hug. And then with the allowing energy, it's just like, there's a person in the world, they tried to hug me. I don't get to dictate whether or not they try to hug me or what they do, but I do get to respond. And my response was that, and you're not even going to be thinking all this because allowing energy doesn't hold on to this, but if to extrapolate it all out into thought, it takes longer to say than it would actually take in the moment. The basic attitude is, it happened. Just like the white lines on the side of the road. We don't think about them after we get off the road because they happened. We didn't love them. We didn't hate them. They're just something that happened. We have no emotional blueprint or whatever. Like, they didn't leave any kind of an emotional trace. The experience of a white line on the side of the road is just an experience of a white line on the side of the road. And we can feel that same way about this hug. I'm not a hugger. I maintain my boundaries and of course, just wink wink, in reality, if you know me, the Wolfman, I am a hugger. I am absolutely a hugger, but I also get consent before I hug people. Do you want to hug? Or I'll put my arms out and stand there and wait. I don't just, I'm a hugger, you're going to get hugged. No, that's kind of rapey, and nobody likes that. But anyways, pretending I'm not a hugger. I'm not a hugger. I don't want to be hugged, but I want to keep this allowing energy. So somebody comes up, they try to hug me. No, thank you. They don't hug me. They move on. There's no problem in that. It's like a situation came up. I handled it. I got nothing. I've got no reason to think about this anymore. It's gone. And so you come up to that person 2 minutes later, and you're like, "Hey, when that person tried to hug you, did it bother you?" And it will take them a second to remember that a person tried to hug them, because who gives a shit? And that's allowing energy. Now, embracing energy, on the other hand, is may be a little bit difficult, and all of this stuff may be difficult. If you're constantly, you know what, we'll get into the difficulty aspect in a second. I'm getting ahead of myself. But if you're constantly in a habit of rejecting, then it's going to be difficult to allow things at first. And I wouldn't try to embrace things until I got good at allowing them. Seems like a little bit of a step too far. But embracing energy would be like this. The person comes up, you don't want your hug. You say, "No, thank you, I don't want a hug." But you're filled with this sort of warmth on the inside. You're like, "Oh, this person doesn't understand me at all." True. They, and they're trying to express love to me in a way that I don't appreciate. However, clumsy as it is an attempt to love me. And that's nice, right? And so that is a little bit of embracing energy. And also, by the way, I'm proud of myself for maintaining my boundary and not letting a person hug me that I didn't want to hug me. And you feel like, so on the outside, to an outside observer, three exact same interaction. Person comes up, "No thank you, I don't want to hug." They go on their way. Person comes up, "No thank you, I don't want to hug." They go on their way. Person comes up, "No thank you, I don't want to hug." They go on their way. Looks exactly the same on the outside. Unless maybe if you're really cued into certain like micro expressions. But the internal experience of having rejection energy, allowing energy, or embracing energy are three very different things. And, by the way, if you want to be a grumpy butt and go through your life rejecting everything all the time and suffer, go for it. You're allowed to do that. There's nothing wrong with suffering. Suffer as much as you want. I'm not telling you that you can't have your suffering. Go for it. But if you don't want to suffer, there are options. You can. It is possible to stop suffering. I have. I'm awake. I don't suffer. Will I fall asleep again? Maybe. Who knows? Possible. If I do, I'll have a thread from this. Right, so I wanted to talk about the difficulty. So I think I've pretty much covered the difference between pain and suffering. So pain is a thing that happens. There is pain, there is sorrow. But like when my heart breaks and I weep, I like it. I really enjoy having a good catharsis. Sometimes I'll rage against things. This is not to say that you can't have all of your emotions and all of your experiences. This is to say that you can have them, and you can have them more fully, and you can let them go all the way through you and touch you in your heart. You don't have to reject them, suppress them. You can let yourself fully experience everything. And there's these lies, these thought patterns that are just straight up lies, where your brain will say, "I can't handle it." Can't handle what? An emotion? Can't handle a stimulus? You can handle it. Now, when I say you can handle it, that doesn't mean if you go out to start a business that your business is going to succeed. You might fail. Handling it doesn't mean that you're going to succeed. It means that if you fail, and you have feelings about that failure, you can handle it. Like, you're still not going to suffer. You're still not going to reject reality and suffer. So you go out, you try to start a business, you fail, and you feel disappointment. And you can handle that disappointment and still be at peace. Because there's like this multi-layered thing where there's your emotions, and then there's the way you feel about your emotions. And this layer is where the suffering comes in. You can feel your sorrow. You can feel your emotional pain. You can feel your rage and fear and all of it. And be okay with it. And not reject it and not suffer. Yeah, you don't have to suffer. Or maybe you do. I don't. Right. So there's the difference between pain and suffering. And then there are many things that you can suffer about that aren't pain. You can be completely pain free and still suffering. Because it's anything about reality that you say, well, this shouldn't be the way that it is. Or, I refuse to believe this, or refuse to accept this. Yeah, this rejection energy. Now, again, that doesn't mean that you don't reject things in the real world. If somebody tries to do something to you that you don't like, you can still reject it. But you just have to accept that it is happening. A great place to... Oh, right. So I wanted to talk about the difficulty of this. Easiest thing in the world to stop suffering. It only took me going through some major trauma, listening to hundreds of hours of spiritual teachers, having a dedicated meditation practice for 10 years, and several plant medicine journeys to get to this point. It's the easiest thing in the world. Anybody can do it. But seriously, like when you start, if you hear this and you're like, that's bullshit, I can't do that. No, you can't, maybe. But I can't do a backflip. But that doesn't mean backflips aren't possible. If I started practicing now, and getting in shape, and doing the practice, I guarantee you, especially maybe I need to get a coach or whatever, because I've never done a backflip before. But like, my body still works fine. I could probably learn how to do a backflip in 3 months if I was dedicated to it. I don't feel like that's outrageous, but it would take practice. So like, I can do a backflip, except I can't do a backflip. So I could learn how to do a backflip. And in the same way, I'm telling you to accept. I'm telling you to stop suffering. And maybe you're like, well, I can't do that. Like, things happen to me and I hate them and I suffer and I can't stop. I hear that. But you can practice. Okay? So maybe like the death of your spouse is if it were to happen, or if you like lose a job, or something, tornado hits your house, maybe you get in a car accident, something bad happens, something that you really don't like, a big thing happens, maybe you're going to suffer. Who knows? Maybe something's going to happen to me soon and I'll suffer from it because it'll be too big and I won't be able to practice. I don't think so, honestly, because I feel like whatever happens, I'm not gonna pretend like it isn't happening. I'm gonna feel my feelings and whatever we get, because I'm not saying we can avoid pain. I'm not saying we can avoid tragedy. I'm saying we can avoid the added thing of suffering on top of it. So anyways, a good way to practice is in traffic, okay? Because everybody's got their idea. Most people have their idea of how everybody else should be driving. But the fact of the matter is, I don't get to dictate how everybody else drives. I don't get to dictate when the lights turn red and green. I don't get to dictate who pulls out in front of me and goes slow. I don't get to dictate who's got halogen headlights and tailgates me. I don't get to choose any of those things. I get to choose how I respond to those things. And so the road is a great place to practice. Because if you realize, one thing that'll help with that, leave a half an hour early. Start getting to where you're going a half an hour early. Not because it makes you a good person or because, your boss will like it or any of that, but just because it's so much less stressful. Like, get there, I'm a half an hour early. I'm gonna read a book. I'm gonna chill on my phone, walk around a little bit, settle into the space before I have to do the thing that I have to do. Show up early. And then also, if you're a half an hour early and you're already like, I don't know what the fuck I'm going to do with myself for a half an hour when I get there. Here's another thing that I have. So I'll go ahead and get sidetracked. Leaving a half an hour early does a couple of things. For one, I never leave a half an hour early. I plan to leave a half an hour early, and then it takes me 10 minutes longer to get out the door than I thought it was. So now I'm only 20 minutes early. But does it feel stressful to be 20 minutes early? No, it feels great. And then if I'm going down 90 and it's 60 miles an hour speed limit, so I'm doing 70, and then somebody pulls out in front of me and wants to do 45, I can afford it. Like, there's the part in my mind, this is just making it easier on yourself to practice this in a way that is easy to practice. So now, okay, yes, I'm still annoyed that somebody pulled out in front of me and is going 45 miles an hour. I've had to emergency brake in order to not get in an accident. Maybe I'm annoyed about that. But what I'm not annoyed about is the fact that I'm going to be late for whatever I'm going to do, because I'm not, because I've got 20 minutes. And so if I have to go 45 and a 60 for 5 minutes, it's not going to make me late. So that's huge. Give yourself more time to get where you're going. And then once you're out there, somebody pulls out in front of you, and this is you practice this. Maybe it doesn't work the first time. Maybe the first time you do it, you don't mean it. Okay? That's fine. Somebody pulls out in front of you, your initial, you're like, motherfucker, how dare you? Like, can't you see I'm driving here? You're screaming, pounding the steering wheel, whatever. Okay. And then you start to calm down and you realize what you've just done. And it's too late. You've already done it. So it's fine. We're not going to beat ourselves up over it. Oh, okay, that was the thing. That was my chance to practice. All right, well, this jackass is in front of me. But I don't get to dictate whether or not he's a jackass. I just get to respond to him. And you've made your first step. That's how easy it actually is. And then eventually, somebody pulls out in front of you, and you're like, oh, I don't get to dictate how they drive. I just get to respond to it. And then eventually you don't even think that. You just... It's becomes such a part of your reality that you don't think about it, any more than you think about, well, I don't just float up off the ground, gravity holds me down. You don't think about that normally in your day-to-day activities. And so in the same way, when somebody pulls out in front of you, after that practice for a long enough time, you won't have to think, well, I don't get to dictate how they drive. You'll automatically know that, so it won't even be worth thinking about, and you'll just respond. You pass them, you don't pass them, you decide that you've got time to just chill. Maybe it's nice to just sit back and drive slow for a while. You come to a stoplight, same thing. You've got enough time, so that's not an issue anymore, and you come to the stoplight and you just, I get to sit for a second. Just this. Wonderful. And so that's how you practice. You practice with traffic or whatever little annoyances. And then when the big things go wrong, eventually you get to the point where you're like, okay, I don't want to suffer about anything. And so no matter what happens, I'm just not going to suffer about it. And I expect that a lot of people are going to have a hard time accepting that. And that's fine. You don't have to accept it. I don't need any of you not to suffer. I just wanted to express this because I have, like I said, I'm awake. Suffering is self-inflicted. All suffering is self-inflicted. And, I love you. Oof. Oh, you son of a bitch. Oh, I love you guys. And I would prefer that you don't suffer, but more importantly, I would enjoy helping anybody to cross that threshold and realize that they don't have to suffer. And I would really enjoy, taking somebody who's really asleep and helping them step onto the path. And I would really enjoy taking somebody who's on the path and having some doubts and reassuring them that, yeah, keep it up. Whatever your practice is, keep it up. And eventually you get to the point where you're not suffering anymore. And I would love to take somebody who's been practicing, who's almost there, and give them that final nudge and help them get over the hump to where that they're not suffering anymore. I would love to see somebody that was suffering stop suffering. And so that is the point of this video. Take it or leave it, man. Because I'm not going to suffer about your suffering either. I love you, but I can't suffer enough to make you happy.